All right, here we go. It's the Sound Off show for, I guess this will be the first one for 2019. So we just trying to get set up in here. All right, there we go. I believe we're on Twitter today. I've got the setup, and it only really lets me go to one thing. Facebook Live, whatever. YouTube's good. I like YouTube. I'll be posting this on YouTube when it's all done. Anyhow, I'm far from being a video professional. I mean, the lighting has got half my face lit up, and there's just not enough room in the studio to make it perfect. But do we have to? Yeah, I'm looking all right. Happy New Year, everyone. I'm just thankful to be here in 2019 and to kick it off with another show. I just wanted to bring everyone up to speed on what happened over the Christmas holidays. Nothing happened over the Christmas holidays. It was the same as it was every year because I'm not a big fan of change. I like to keep everything sort of the same. But New Year means we're going to change some stuff up. So I thought I'd catch you up and let you know about some of the things that we've done here. We've got some podcasts that we've created. We also took some time to go over 2018 stats. So I actually had a blog called The History of My Podcast Stats, which came out, I guess I put it out January 1. I started writing it on December 31st. And a very interesting exercise, to say the least, about podcasts and podcast stats. And I'm not going to sit here and bore you all day with this stuff about what it's all about, but I can tell you that the Sound Off podcast is, it's growing. We work at it. It gets more and more listeners and consumers every year of the podcast. It goes up. But every year I'm reporting a number that's going to be lower and lower. And the reason why that happens is because of the way the podcast industry has been counting. So, I mean, I was on SoundCloud, and there's a lot of nefarious activity that goes on with SoundCloud. When you have a podcast up there, it's just tough to count because, there's some bots up there. There's all sorts of wackiness and double clicks. And it's, we got off SoundCloud. And then after we got off SoundCloud, we moved to a new host, so something more reliable. We used a 5-minute filter window. We also took a look using some other filter windows as well. What constitutes a listen? Listen, I put the whole blog up there. If you want to check out the blog, it's at soundoffpodcast.com. It's just a blog. It's not an episode. It's not a podcast episode or anything like that. But I thought it would be a good idea to let you know what I know. I mean, the reason why I got into podcasting in the first place was to find out what this is all about and how it works. I'm just curious. That's all it is. I'm just curious. I wished you a happy New Year, and to insert your resolution here, I have not formally come up with a resolution, and in fact, I've had it suggested to me by my partner that we do not come up with resolutions. Why don't you set an intention for 2019, huh? Something else you should think about. Yeah. This podcast, by the way, would be nowhere without our sponsors. And apologies for that's actually not the right thing I wanted to do just yet. They're the sponsors. Okay, so I want to thank Promo Suite, who've been shredding paper since 1992, to Rocco and to CJ and to Rachel, who work at Promo Suite, who support this podcast and help keep it running every week. We put out an episode every week. I also want to thank Anya and David over at Enlogic for their support in Canada. Enlogic is a provider of data. Most notably, ratings are very popular on Ratings Day, whether that's PPM or Diary when it comes out. I'm sure they get inundated with lots of activity and reports that get cranked out. And as well, I want to say hi to Justin. Justin Dove is been a sponsor of this podcast now for over a year now, and he's just bust out on his own. If you're into imaging, if you're in need of imaging, if you're in need of voices and whatnot, he's great. He's connected in the industry and can get you through by the way, if you're going to see Jason Barrett at his conference, Justin's going to be at the Sports Radio Summit, which is going to be in Los Angeles in February. And if you're in sports radio, please, you want to be looking at that. I mean, it's just a no-brainer. If you're going to go to one conference a year and you're in sports radio, you go to the Sports Radio Summit, which is going to be taking place February in Los Angeles. All right. Now, I was talking about podcasts. So this is one that we did this week. This is Natasha Gargiulo. She is from Virgin Radio in Montreal, and she's fantastic. I had the opportunity. She was working in promotions, and when I was in Montreal, she was working across the hall from me. So we've probably had a glass of wine or two, a few ratings parties, promotional success. Oh, it was so much fun to work with her when I did. And now, after 2006, I moved away. I hadn't spoken to her for 12 years. I thought that's ridiculous. So caught up with her. Now doing mornings with Freeway Frank and Lee on Virgin Radio in Montreal, and also had a stint at ET Canada, which we talked about. We talked about her life changes and some curveballs that life threw at her, and very authentic and very, very nice conversation that we had on the podcast. That is now out. And please, by all means, do check that out. All right, what else we got here? Oh, yeah, this is back. Yeah, okay, so I'll admit fully that this is an old blog that I did last March. But The Bachelor's back. So I had to recirculate the blog, and I think you probably missed it the first time. Check it out again. So radio lessons from The Bachelor. And some of the things, the way it's grown into a I mean, if The Bachelor was a radio station, this thing would be number one. And you want your radio station to be behaving just like The Bachelor, where every day is the most dramatic episode of whatever radio show you've got on, right? You know it to be true. And this, for me, this gives me a great excuse to watch The Bachelor, because there are radio lessons for The Bachelor. People used to be like, hey, Matt, why do you watch wrestling? Because there's so many radio lessons, especially if you're on the air and your personality and you have a partner that you work with. Watch wrestling, right? 2 people, 1 ring. What's radio? 2, 3 people, 1 stage. That's what it's about. So Bachelor's a little bit different. That's about character development and social media and the way they handle storylines. Pay attention to all that stuff. I wrote a blog about it. I found it interesting. I hope you find it exciting. I'm very excited by this. So check out that blog if you would. I've got way too many graphics today. I want to apologize for it. It's insane, all the graphics I've got going. This was a podcast that we made with over at the Hot Air Podcast. www.hotairpodcast.com. So this is Allison Curry, and she went out on some dates and then tweeted about it, and I thought, oh, that's interesting. And she's really had it with Tinder and Bumble and Match.com and whatnot. So what we did was we did a podcast about it, and a lot of people were interested in it. So Hot Air Podcast, that's another podcast that I do on my own. And basically it's all the leftover audio and the extra stuff and the things I'm curious in life that I feel just need to be put out in a podcast. We call this the podcast not about broadcast around the office here. But Allison is, she's actually a broadcaster. So she's done some sports radio, and she makes some appearances on 96.3 in Edmonton. Personality. Connect with her if you can. If you want to have her on your podcast, by all means. And she's a great follow on Twitter as well. Dallas Stars fan, do not hold that against her by any stretch of the imagination. I don't know what else I have here to tell you about. Did I have anything else to tell you? That seems rather quick that I got through all that very, very quickly. Yeah, it is. All right. Support my sponsors if you would. I listed them at promosuite.com, also nlogic.ca and jd2.ca. Those are the websites for my sponsors. If you'd like to become a sponsor, I would love to have you as a sponsor for 2019 and to support the podcast in this way. Affordable. I'll make it worth your time, make it worth your while, and tons of value as well. And I think that's pretty much all I have. That's outstanding that I sort of weaseled my way through all this at this time. Apologies to not necessarily getting to say hi to you on Twitter or whatnot. If you're seeing this on YouTube or Facebook, thank you very much for making it through to the end. And have a kick-ass 2019. Send me your notes. It's Matt at soundoffpodcast.com.